he liked them on the whole, and he told her about the beginning of fairies. You see, Wendy, when the first baby laughed for the first time, its laugh broke into 1,000 pieces, and they all went skipping about, and that was the beginning of fairies. Tedious talk this is, but being a stay-at-home, she liked it. And so, he went on good-naturedly. There ought to be one fairy for every boy and girl. Ought to be, isn't there? No, you see, children know such a lot now. They soon don't believe in fairies, and every time a child says, I don't believe in fairies, there's a fairy somewhere that falls down dead. Really? He thought they had now talked enough about fairies, and it struck him that Tinker Bell was keeping very quiet. I can't think where she has gone to, he said, rising, and he called Tink by name. Wendy's heart went flutter with a sudden thrill. Peter, she cried, clutching him, you don't mean to tell me that there is a fairy in this room? She was here just now, he said a little impatiently. You don't hear her, do you? And they both listened. The only sound I hear, said Wendy, is like a tinkle of bells. Well, that's Tink. That's the fairy language. I think I hear her too. The sound came from the chest of drawers, and Peter made a merry face. No one could ever look quite so merry as Peter, and the loveliest of gurgles was his laugh. He had his first laugh too. Wendy, he whispered gleefully, I do believe I shut her up in the drawer. He let poor Tink out of the drawer, and she flew about the nursery, screaming with fury. You shouldn't say such things, Peter retorted. Of course I'm very sorry, but how could I know you were in the drawer? Wendy was not listening to him. Oh, Peter, she cried, if she would only stand still and let me see her. They hardly ever stand still, he said. But for one moment Wendy saw the romantic figure come to rest on the cuckoo clock. Oh, the lovely, she cried, though Tink's face was still distorted with passion. Tink, said Peter amiably, this lady says she wishes you were her fairy. Tinker Bell answered insolently. What does she say, Peter? He had to translate. She is not very polite. She says you're a great ugly girl and that she is my fairy. He tried to argue with Tink. You know you can't be my fairy, Tink, because I'm a gentleman and you're a lady. To this Tink replied in these words, You silly boy, and disappeared into the bathroom. She is quite a common fairy, Peter exclaimed apologetically. She is called Tinker Bell because she mends the pots and kettles. They were together in the armchair by this time, and Wendy plied him with more questions. If you don't live in Kensington Gardens now, sometimes I do still. But where do you live mostly now? With the Lost Boys. Who are they? They're the children who fall out of their perambulators when the nurse is looking the other way. If they're not claimed in 7 days, they're sent far away to the Neverland to defray expenses. I'm captain. What fun it must be! Yes, said cunning Peter, but we're rather lonely. You see, we have no female companionship. Are none of the others girls? Oh no, girls, you know, are much too clever to fall out of their mother and father's care. This flattered Wendy immensely. I think, she said, it is perfectly lovely the way you talk about girls. John there just despises us. For reply, Peter rose and kicked John out of bed, blankets and all, one kick. This seemed to Wendy rather forward for a first meeting, and she told him with spirit that he was not captain in her house. However, John continued to sleep so placidly on the floor that she allowed him to remain there. And I know you meant to be kind, she said, relenting, so you may give me a kiss. For a moment she had forgotten his ignorance about kisses. I thought you would want it back, he said a little bitterly, and offered to return her the thimble. Oh dear, said the nice Wendy, I don't mean a kiss, I mean a thimble. What's that? It's like this. She kissed him. And that's the end of this chapter here. We will continue that on with the next video. I hope you guys are liking it so far. I just want to leave you with a couple thoughts here. So think about where you think Peter Pan is from. Maybe you know because you've seen the movie and read the story before, but think about what you know about Neverland and why do you think Peter Pan is able to stay young forever? That's the question. How do you think he stayed as a kid forever? So think about that, and we'll see you next chapter. Or we'll see you for the next chapter.